first topic for this week is European exploration in the 13 colonies. We're going to go back about 500-600 years and look at how did our country become the country that it is today and the very beginnings of it. And our country goes all the way back to this mindset from the Europeans of let's go and explore the world. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's look at our picture that we have here. And what do we see in this picture? What do we see in this picture? So this continent right here is Europe. That's where we see Spain and Portugal right here are kind of our two big countries, but we have England and France and Belgium. We have all these European countries, and during this time period, we see for about 400, 500, 600 years, they're traveling all over the entire world, going and exploring, discovering new places, discovering new products, new items, food that they'd never seen before, animals they had never seen before, and then they were shipping them around the world, selling them, trading them, and making really kind of what we first see as this idea of kind of a global market. So let's get there. It goes all the way back to 1492 with Christopher Columbus. A lot of people know this is the really famous one, kind of the first explorer that was originally from Italy, but then was funded through Spain and was given all that money to kind of go on that voyage. We see other explorers at this time, Prince Henri from Portugal, we see Giovanni from Italy. So all of these Europeans, they all had these explorers and they wanted to go out and kind of explore the world. And they kind of carried this mindset of for king and country. They were trying to go and discover new lands. So looking at this picture, we see all of them. Also, what's important at this time period, at this time, civilization starts realizing that the earth isn't flat. The earth is actually this round globe. And we see that of these explorers studying it and going, oh, if it is round, maybe there is a faster way to get to India and China and to get all of the trades here. Because for hundreds of years, the Europeans were getting access to China through the Silk Road. They were getting access to the Orient, and there was all of this trade going through by land, but it took so long for people to travel by land from Europe all the way over to the Orient and back. And they had gotten there by boats, and they were thinking maybe if we had the other direction, we could actually go around the world and get there faster. But they didn't know what was actually out here. At that time, the Europeans didn't know about what we call about North and South America today. And so they go on these adventures trying to explore, finding routes to the Orient, to India and to China. Movies that really make me think about this are Pirates of the Caribbean, of this mindset of we're exploring, we're taking goods, we're finding food and animals and products from one area, and we're loading them on our boats, and we're taking them to others, and we'll be selling them in other port cities. What the Pirates of the Caribbean movie portrays is a little bit of that pirateering, buccaneering mindset. In the movies, Pirates of the Caribbean, we do see this concept of the East Indian Trade Company. And it is with England creating this huge company of we can make a lot of money off of this. We can send boats, we can pick up these items, pick up these products, ship them to other countries, buy them, sell them, and make a lot of money. A lot of money. Because a lot of these Europeans that had a lot of money were really intrigued by these exotic items, these exotic animals and creatures and fruits and vegetables that they had never seen before. And they were willing to pay a lot of money for them. What do we see in the New World? For example, in North and South America, we see sugarcane that is being grown in the tropics that the Europeans weren't necessarily used to. Sugarcane then gets refined and turned into this alcohol called rum, and that's why, like again, in the movies Pirates of the Caribbean, rum is so popular throughout the Caribbean because that was part of one of the trade items. Tomatoes were a new vegetable found in North and South America that the Europeans had never seen before. Potatoes were also a vegetable from the New World that the Europeans had never seen before. But it was also kind of this give and take of relationship. In Europe, they brought several items over that the people living in North and South America at the time had never seen before, like horses, these domesticated animals that you could ride and travel long distances. The technology of guns, muskets. The Europeans had gotten gunpowder from the Chinese and had developed that technology to make firearms, and the people, the indigenous people living in North and South America, had never seen such technology. And so again, it's buying and selling. Other technology for navigation, such as the compass and boats. Over in the Orient, in China and India, we see silks and different fabrics that the Europeans loved to make clothing out of. The Chinese were the creators of paper money. So we start seeing kind of these concepts of, oh, we can actually make currency out of paper. And we got that idea from them. India, we get a lot of spices for cooking. And so for the first time, we're seeing this idea of a global market. We have these companies like the East India Trade Company that is literally traveling the world, picking up goods and items and then selling them in other port cities around the world. And we're starting to see for the first time that if you are rich, if you have money and power, you can afford to buy things from pretty much around the world. So I want to go now into the idea of the explorer's mindset. What was their mindset like? And I kind of want to analyze some of the images here. So in our first image here, I really see this idea of patriotism, this idea of for God and for country. All these explorers would often come with flags from their home country. They would get there, and what was the first thing they would do? They would take that flag and go, this is now property of my king. This is land of my king, and my king now owns this land. This is his. It's ours. We own it now. I just got here, but it's now ours. Why? Why did they do that? Why were they able to do that? Why did they think they had the capacity of actually doing that? Well, let's look at the other picture here. What do we see here in this imagery? I see the Europeans here with their clothing, their technology, their firearms, their muskets, their swords. I see religion that they're bringing with them here. And then I see the way that these native people are portrayed. How are they portrayed? They're naked, they have no clothes, they're kind of just savages, uneducated, uncivilized. And the Europeans saw them and went, oh my goodness, we need to help them. They don't have religion, they don't have Christianity, they don't have our language, they don't have our education, they don't have any of our cultural constructs. We need to help them because we are better than them. And that's kind of this mindset of they really thought we are better than them. So we have the right to just say, nope, this is now our land. We own this. They really viewed them as uncivilized barbarians, and that it was their duty as Europeans to teach and to educate them about the modern world, is what they called it. But this brings up a question of the idea of culture and cultural values. Really what we see here is the mixing of two different cultures. And the European culture, if we look at their culture, they're really viewing it as our culture is better than your culture. When we look at their language, religion, customs, holidays, values, beliefs, they were like, all of the values and the beliefs, the things that we think you should have, you must have because we are better than you. Our culture is better than your culture. And they carried that mindset with them. So if we watch the movie Pocahontas, we can actually see a little bit of this idea of questioning this mindset in Pocahontas' song, Colors of the Wind. So I wanted to look at some of the lyrics. It says, you think I am an ignorant savage, and you've been so many places, I guess it must be so, but still I cannot see. If the savage one is me, how can there be so much you don't know? He says, you think you own whatever land you land on. The earth is just a dead thing you can claim. And these are the words coming from that song. It was this idea that the Europeans had of, no, we can claim this land. We get there, we arrive, this is now our king's land. this cultural mindset. So we see kind of positives and negatives of this European exploration. On one hand, we see this economy, this global market exploring of we're now getting access to new things, new items, new animals, new products, and it's this exciting time for science. It's an exciting time for the development of education and social institutions. But then on the other hand, we see this negative aspect of these Europeans going out and carrying that mindset of, we're better than you. It is our job to teach you and to educate you about the ways to live your life, and that's our culture, which is really kind of a terrible mindset to have. So let's look at where these Europeans were going. The Europeans, during this like 500-600 year time span, really start carving up the entire globe. We see France making it all the way through Africa. There was a lot of French colonies all throughout Africa. That's why a lot of French countries are called Francophone countries, where they do speak French as a second language. France goes over to North America, up into Canada. That is why over in Eastern Canada and Quebec, they also still speak French. And then the French actually end up going all the way down through the Midwest. And that's why in the Midwest, we see a lot of French places, a lot of French names, like Chicago is actually a French name, Detroit. Michigan, we see all these French, Des Moines, Lamars, a lot of French influence. And it actually goes all the way down to Louisiana with Baton Rouge and all of those French cities there. The Portuguese get on this bandwagon too and travel. They go all the way over to South Africa as well, like Mozambique was a Portuguese colony. Their largest colony was over here in Brazil. They colonized Brazil, and that's why in Brazil they still speak Portuguese, because they were colonized by Portugal. Spain was one of the large colonizers as well too. They traveled all the way through South and Central America, working their way all the way up through the Caribbean. They go into North Africa. There's actually a few places in North Africa, Morocco in parts, where they do speak Spanish as well, because they were colonized by Spain. And the Spanish go all the way up to the southwestern part of the United States today. So all the way up from California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, all of that territory belonged to Spain at one point in time. And that is why we see so much Spanish influence in that part of the United States, because Spanish speakers were one of the first ones to arrive there and really influence the native people. And for our history, one of the largest colonizers, I would say, would be the United Kingdom and England. And England comes all the way over to the Caribbean. There's a lot of Caribbean islands and some of the smaller ones that were English territories. And then the east coast of North America. And that is where our history begins in the United States, with those 13 colonies along the east coast that belonged to England, Great Britain. England also then goes all the way over to India and creates colonies there. They make it over to Myanmar, to Southeast Asia. They go to Hong Kong and Macau. And some of these colonies actually last a really long time. For example, Hong Kong was one of the last colonies, and they had England was in control of Hong Kong, I think, until 1997. So like a long time that these colonies had really kind of held on. England makes it all the way to Australia and New Zealand. And this is where we see for the first time one country, England, really kind of spreads itself out, where it's now one country that stretches pretty much all the way around the entire globe. If we look at the British Empire, it goes all the way around the entire globe. And they have this saying of, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Because if we think about it, as the earth rotates around, the sun will always be shining. There will always be light on part of the British Empire. So this starts our history, the 13 colonies that was originally established by England and Great Britain at that time. And this is where our story begins, way back in the 1600s. So I want to look at some political cartoons of this idea of European exploration, and let's see some of the things that we're seeing in these cartoons and what messages is it trying to send us. Here's a political cartoon. What do we see here? When we look at political cartoons, words are very important. And so I see Africa, goldfields, goldfields, goldfields. Again, that's those items, right? Those things that the Europeans wanted so that they could then sell and trade and make money off of. We see this person here. Would we classify him as European? We have his hat. Absolutely. It looks very English, doesn't it? That like English stereotypical image of an English man with that hat there. And he's kind of reaching out, almost kind of like a Frankenstein, right? A Frankenstein or a zombie, this grotesque, like reaching for it. What mindset is that sending? What is it really telling us about this European mindset? This idea of we're going out, we're almost kind of like monsters. We're going out, we're taking places, we're going to colonize them to help us. Here's another cartoon of the idea of European exploration. Here they actually use a monster itself, a sea monster, that's kind of like stretching out all over the world, expanding its empire to be all the way around. The question I posed is, why a sea monster? Is there a connection between Great Britain and a sea monster? Great Britain is an island. How did it travel to all of these countries to claim them as its own? It got there by the sea, by boats. So it is kind of this idea of it's this sea monster coming from the island of England, going out there, which I think is interesting imagery. This is a French cartoon, Afrique, that's the French word for Africa. Again, words are important. So we see Africa here that looks like a cake or a big thing of brie cheese. And then we see all of these people standing around. Again, how would you identify these people? Would these people be Europeans? Would they be colonizers? I mean, the people being colonized, the native people, they're definitely Europeans. I mean, we see it in their clothing, middle class, wealthy, I wouldn't say middle class, higher class, wealthy men sitting there looking up, and they're taking a knife and they're really kind of just carving up Africa, right? You get this piece, I get this piece, you get this piece, and the Europeans did that. They all kind of went through Africa and went, all right, this, you get this part. This, you get this part. Oh, you get this part. And even the countries we see in Africa today, the lines of the countries were often drawn by Europeans. And when the Europeans drew the lines of African countries, they didn't actually know, or I shouldn't say no, but they didn't really know or really respect the people who were living there. So many African tribes, many groups of people are now actually in multiple countries because you have this tribe that spreads over this large group of land, and then the Europeans came through and just went, oh, this is a country and this is a country. It's like, but the people are like, no, but we've been living here, and like all of our people, we all speak the same language. Some of them are over here in Togo, and some of the people are over here, and we actually saw that the Europeans kind of just came through and said, nope, nope, we're gonna make perfect little squares because we like squares. Squares are good. You can just draw a line and say, all right, Portugal, you get that side, and France, you get this side, and Belgium, you get this side. We see things like the Congo. There isn't one country named the Congo. We have the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we have the Republic of Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo was colonized by the French, and the Republic of Congo was colonized by Belgium. But both of them speak French because Belgium actually uses French a lot as a lingua franca. Here's another cartoon. We see that same concept, but here, who is carving up what? Who do we see? We see Europeans, not just all Europeans though. Who's this gentleman right here with that sword there? I would say this is definitely Japan. We see the United States. We see, I believe, Russia, Germany, and England, the Queen of England, and they're all getting together going, who's going to get a slice of China? England's like, no, we get Macau, we get Hong Kong, this is ours. And Russia's like, no, we want this part here in Mongolia. And Germany's like, no, we want this. And so this idea of let's chop up, let's slice and dice and all take a piece of this country. All right. So this will move on to our reading questions for our GED about European exploration, and we're going to do some map analysis. So here's a map that they've given us on the GED question. It's very important to read the title of our maps. Titles are very important. So it says Voyages of Exploration circa 1000, 1609. This tells me, I see those dates and I go, we're looking at European exploration. This is before the United States becomes a country. The United States of America is 1776 is when the United States becomes a country. So this is before the United States is officially a country. And let's see what we see here. We see all these different colored lines, labels. Everyone's kind of coming from Europe and kind of going around the world. Oh, I see this orange line is interesting. The arrows kind of change. Here the arrows are coming this way. And so it looks like they left here. They went around and came all the way around. Oh, so they actually made it all the way around the globe. One of the first voyages to make it all the way around. Well, let's look at our question. Here's our reading. It says in the 1400s, Henry, or Henri the Navigator, a Portuguese prince, helped start the Age of Discovery in Europe by funding numerous expeditions abroad. One of his goals was to find a sea route to Asia. He also wanted to gain geographic knowledge. Before the 1400s, exploration did not exist, but on a smaller scale. However, sea and ocean expeditions did not venture very far away from their home bases. It was not until the Vikings' exploration of the Atlantic that expeditions penetrated distant waters. And we see that up here where I talked about the Vikings kind of coming over. And they're one of the first ones. All right, first question. From which two European countries did the majority of explorers begin their journeys? Circle the country names on the map. All right, which countries do we see them coming from? Most of the arrows are coming from right here, and this is called the Iberian Peninsula. What two countries are here? We see Spain, and we see Portugal, right there. I should turn on my cursor so you guys can see it. Go. All right, also, if we had read the passage too, I also see the word Portuguese. That tells me Portugal is one of the answers for sure. If Henry the Navigator is Portuguese, he's coming from Portugal. All right, number 10. On the map, place an X on the first expedition to reach North America. All right, so on my map here is North America. And so I'm looking at all of the ones, this blue one, boom, 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 boom. All of these reached North America. Which one was the earliest? And it would be 1100s with the Vikings. And this is what's super fascinating. A lot of people think Christopher Columbus, because his is so popular and famous in 1492, they think his was the first. But historians and researchers are finding more and more evidence that Vikings left Scandinavia up here, went across to Greenland, Iceland, and Greenland, and made it to North America. And there are remnants of Viking settlements here in North America that date back way before Christopher Columbus had ever gone over. I think Redbeard is one of the more famous Viking explorers at the time that had gone around. There's a really great TV show on Netflix that talks about this time period of the Vikings going and exploring and pillaging and finding goods and resources. It was on Netflix. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore. Maybe on Amazon Prime, but called Vikings. Highly recommend it. Really good TV show. All right, number 11. On the map, locate and underline the name of the explorer who first circumnavigated the world. Circumnavigated. Oh, big word. Let's break it apart here. Do we see any part of the word that we know, I know what that means? We might know navigate, maybe. We might know circ. What words can you think of that start with circ? I think circle. So circ is this idea of moving in a circle. Navigate means to move. Circ, navigate. So basically navigate, to travel in a circle, or to travel all the way around the world. So which explorer was the first one to travel all the way around the world? We already talked about two of them. This orange and this blue line both go all the way around the world. Which one was sooner? Drake's travel was 1577 to 1580, and Magellan, I think was a Spanish explorer, Magellan, from 1519 to 1522. Which was the first one? 1519 to 1522, the Spanish explorer. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out here was, so he left in 1519, and then he came back in 1522. How many years is that? How many years? 3? 3 years. Think about that. Think about this time period. We're talking about 1519. No cell phones, no email, really no international postal service. It's not even like you could send a letter home. He leaves, he takes off, he leaves the port. He says, bye, peace out, deuces Spain, peace out Portugal. I will see you guys maybe in 3 years if I don't die. Have fun, and takes off. And then they don't hear from him for 3 years. Think about that. Crazy. What life was like for these explorers. It was full of adventure, but there was just as much danger and risk. And they left with that mindset of, it's very possible that I will not come back. So Fernando de Magellan is from Spain. All right, number 12. On the map, draw a box around the name of the explorer who explored the Caribbean islands. We need to draw a box. We really have to listen to the directions on these carefully. So like here, place an X, we needed to really place an X there. Here we needed to underline, and here we need to put a box around. They really want us to follow the directions. So on the map, draw a box around the name of the explorer who explored the Caribbean islands. Again, this makes me think of Pirates of the Caribbean, of this trading that was going on. Where is the Caribbean located? It is located right here. It's this really warm water, really kind of close to the equator. The equator kind of cuts the world right here in Ecuador, so it's just above the equator, very warm, lots of islands, so it's pretty easy to navigate pretty well. Who is this explorer? Where is this line? If I go all the way back, who was it? The famous guy, Christopher Columbus, in 1492. And this is why a lot of people think he was the first, because he's one of the more famous ones, but he wasn't necessarily the first with the Vikings. So that is the end of week 1. This idea of European exploration, the Europeans leaving Europe, going and traveling the world. We see the benefits of creating this idea of a global market, of buying and selling international goods from around the world. But then we also see this negative aspect of colonization, this mindset of, I'm better than you. We're going to claim this land, and this land is now going to belong to our king. And that's going to lead us into our next lesson.